So I came across this tweet on, of course, Twitter, X, as they call it now, by an account I've become familiar with, Mr. Guns and Gear. If you're on X, he's well worth a follow. He posts very gun-friendly, Second Amendment-friendly content. A bright guy, very interesting content that he puts out on X. I follow him. I encourage you to do so as well. And he describes what's happening in this video. Criminals yell Seattle police when trying to kick someone's door in before receiving fire from the homeowner. He writes, I've mentioned this in a few videos over the years, but criminals, cartels often pretend to be police while gaining entry to a home. So if someone's kicking in your door without warning, do what you feel is appropriate. And then he embedded the video. So we're going to look at that video in just a moment. To be fair, there's a little tiny URL here, like a watermark on the video, that can be sourced back to this account, which is on Instagram. I'm not often on Instagram personally, but I wanted to give this account a shout out. Seattle looks like SHXT. And he posts a lot of content, as you might imagine, around Seattle and its many crime and political problems. So just to give credit to where to my knowledge, the original source of this video came from, over on this Instagram account. All right, now let's take a look at the actual video. So what we're going to see here is some kind of, home security camera, ring security camera, apparently mounted, above and to the left of the door, little patio here, front porch. Ultimately, it'll be 3 bad guys attempting to gain entry, 2 right at the door, 1 just behind them. We will see that they are armed. The image does brighten up. I imagine the security camera, many of the ring security cameras, for example, you can set them so they illuminate when there's something close to them. So it will brighten up, and we'll see one of the bad guys kind of wrap his hand in his coat, use his coat to open up the screen door. And his compatriot will then shout what sounds like Seattle police and start kicking at the door pretty darn hard. The door does eventually, by the way, get kicked open, but it holds up pretty well for quite some time. Many typical front doors on homes are not at all hard to kick in and are worthy of reinforcement. I would encourage you. You can make your front door. You can't make it impossible to kick in, but you can make it pretty darn hard to kick in. And remember, the purpose of your door isn't really to keep bad guys out permanently. The purpose of the door is to slow them down long enough that you have the opportunity to get to a firearm. So let's go ahead and start our little movie here.
Seattle police!
And there we have it. The bad guys are run off. Now, a couple things worthy of note here. The bad guy does, in fact, yell Seattle police before he starts kicking. Now, we've all heard, I'm sure, the controversy around, let me change this up a little bit. We've all heard the controversy around the use of no-knock warrants. No-knock warrants are largely an artifact of the war on drugs, because it was so easy for drug dealers inside a home to simply flush the contraband drugs down the toilet if they had time before the police could gain entry. It became more common for the police to use no-knock warrants. They don't announce anything. They just kick the door in and they're inside the home. The trouble, of course, with no-knock warrants, and there are, of course, constitutional issues, but the more practical concerns are, it's not uncommon for police to be sent to the wrong house. So they're sent to the house of an innocent person, and they abruptly kick in the door. And if that's my house, I'm typically carrying a gun, even at home, you're likely to get shot. And only later do I realize you were a police officer who thought he was correctly executing a no-knock warrant. And then, of course, that cop's friends would presumably shoot me. So it's bad for everybody in the mistaken address context. And that happens not unusually. So the use of no-knock warrants has come under increasing criticism. And in fact, Washington State, so this occurred in Interestingly enough, these bad guys say they're from Seattle police. In fact, I think I have prepared a little map. This might be one of the factors that kind of gave up the game for them in attempting to pretend they were police. And that is, yeah, here it is. So that red circle on the right there, that's Auburn. That's where this home was actually located. It's actually much closer to Tacoma, another major Washington city, than it is to Seattle. In fact, from Seattle's southern border, which is right about where this interstate sign is here at the bottom of this body of water, to the border of Auburn is a full 17 miles. So the notion that Seattle police would be serving any kind of warrant in Auburn obviously suggests a certain lack of credibility that these are actually Seattle police officers. So that was a mistake on their part for sure. It's also worth noting that Seattle, the state of Washington, I should say, has itself kind of banned no-knock warrants. So here's the relevant statute for that. Let me make this bigger so we can read it. By the way, on the right there, that's how you get a free copy, your own free copy of our best-selling book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles, actual physical copy. You can check it out on Amazon, but don't buy it on Amazon. They'll charge you for the book and shipping and handling. We eat the cost of the book. We give you the book for free. We do ask that you cover the cost of shipping and handling, but you can get this book at lawofselfdefense.com/free book, as you see there on the right. But to make this more legible, let's do this. Washington Statute 1031-040, officer may break and enter. So this is giving police officers the permission to commit what would normally be a crime, to break and enter into another person's home. And it reads, to make, paragraph 1, to make an arrest in criminal actions, the officer may break open any outer or inner door or windows of a dwelling house or other building or any other enclosure, if after notice of his or her office of purpose, he or she would be refused admittance. So that's without a warrant even. But paragraph 2 says an officer may not seek and a court may not issue a search or arrest warrant granting an express exception to the requirement for the officer to provide notice of his or her office and purpose when executing the warrant. So here the legislature is saying we are prohibiting the courts from issuing or any officer from requesting a literal no-knock warrant, that no notice is required. Notice is always required. This second paragraph is new. It was added to the statute effective May 18th, 2021. So it's only 2.5 years old. And it's part of the pendulum swing against no-knock warrants that we've been experiencing the last few years. Probably a good thing. I mean, no-knocks were certainly being vastly overused. And of course, they carry the dangers we've already discussed. So that is that Washington no-knock. The trouble, of course, with these statutes is, frankly, I don't think they're very effective at what they claim to be their intended purpose. Because what the cops can still do is be a fraction of a second away from smashing in your door and suddenly announce we're police. And a fraction of a second later, your door is smashed in. How is that, for any practical purpose, any different than a no-knock warrant? Because you're not being given effective notice, I would argue. And that's what these guys do here. They actually falsely announced they're Seattle police. And an instant after they do that, they commence kicking in the door. Well, let me change it over here. So here they're coming up on the stoop.
Seattle police.
So Seattle police, before they try to break anything in. But an instant later, there's the kick. So I would suggest that the legislature really wants to do away with no-knock warrants in a practical sense. They need to require that the police have to give effective notice of what it is they're attempting to do. rather than just some nominal notice. I mean, you can have that battering ram. The actual police could have the battering ram swinging at the door when they announce that they're police. And half a second later, the door's off the hinges. I'm not sure that's the outcome the legislature was looking for when they passed that no knock warrants